Everybody, first of all, I'd like to start off with an apology. This talk was meant to be called The Art of Bootstrapping, Launching for Tech Startup on a Budget. It was meant to go into things like how to reduce cost and focus and effort on tech in your tech startup. But the more and more I looked at reducing things, optimizing things, the more I thought when people ask why you would want to do that. Surely if you're in a tech startup, tech should always and everywhere be your main focus and what to spend most money on. But if you look at why startups actually fail, you find out that they aren't failing because of tech. And if they're not failing because of tech, then maybe we should start focusing on other things. So this talk has now been retitled to The Art of Bootstrapping, Focus on the Things That Really Matter. So it's based on my experience in the past 25 years as a software developer. It's based on my last 4 years working with startups in the US, helping to take their ideas to market, and it's also based on my current experience as CTO of a local startup. So you might ask, why is this talk important to you? You might not work in a startup at the moment, but as a developer, the likelihood is that you'll be asked to join a startup at some point. You might even have an idea of your own startup, but even if you don't work in a startup or don't intend to work in a startup, this talk still might be relevant for you. If you have any type of idea that you want to go to market with, if you work in any team that's looking to take any sort of idea, any sort of innovative idea to market, then this talk still could be relevant to you. And hopefully at the end of it, you'll have some practical advice, some important questions to be asked about your innovative idea or your startup. So what are we going to cover? First of all, we're going to cover why engineering tasks should not be your focus in your tech startup. I'm a software developer, have been for 25 years. I love tech, I love coding, I love my community. So it pains me to have to write a talk about why we should be putting focus away from tech. We'll also be looking at, if it's not going to be tech, then what should we focus on in our startups and in our innovation teams. And we'll also be taking a practical way of looking at how to make those important and difficult decisions on what to cut and what to not cut. First of all, why would we want to cut tech, cost and focus? Well, first of all, your tech startup will likely fail. It'll fail not because of engineering, it'll be because of something else. And if tech is one of the biggest costs and one of the biggest focus in tech startups, and they're still failing, then it makes absolute sense that we should try and evaluate it and see where else we should be putting our focus. Why do I say that your tech startup will fail? Well, it's because the stats on the failure rate of all startups are absolutely brutal. So these stats are from failrate.com, which says that 9 out of 10, more than 9 out of 10 startups will fail. So you might be in an innovation team, you might be in a startup at the minute, and you think, well, I'm going to be those 1 out of 10 that's going to be a success. But the stats tell a different story. There's a long list of failed startups with incredibly good ideas, with brilliant founders that are incredibly motivated, with lots of confidence. The startup ideas that have had a beautiful UI, beautiful UX, that have been engineered to the nth degree, that still end up in more than 9 out of 10 startups that fail. So we need to learn from the lessons of the past. 9 out of 10 startups fail, but why? More importantly, why are they failing? Why are so many startups failing? And this chart is an incredibly important chart. You would expect in a tech startup that it's tech is why tech startups are failing. You think it'd be things like performance or security or a lack of features, but this chart is telling an entirely different story. So the question, is it tech that is causing tech startups to fail? The answer is equivocally no. Only 6% of startups are failing because of tech startups. This chart is also pretty emphatic as well as telling you why startups are failing. It is saying that 56% of the time that a startup is going to fail due to marketing related issues. 22% due to marketing problems, and 34% due to a lack of product market fit. So 56% in total marketing related issues. I let that sink in. Only 6% tech problems, 56% marketing related problems. It's almost 10 times more likely that your startup is going to fail because of marketing related issues rather than tech problems. So what can we do with that information? How can we refocus away from tech to the things that really matter? And in particular, the main reason why your startup is going to fail, and that is lack of product market fit. But what is product market fit? Product market fit is about asking, are there enough customers willing to pay enough money over enough of a period of time for what you are offering to make it a viable business or idea? The important thing is what you are offering, how it is going to fit in the identified market. And how do we know that startups don't know about their product market fit? Well, the statistics on the past screen told us that, but also tech startups are trying to do something new, something innovative, and it is more likely to fail. Tech startups in particular are prone to failure because they're innovative. A startup is basically just a business experiment with some potential. They're testing assumptions, and those assumptions are very likely wrong. The more innovative your idea, the more riskier the assumptions that you're making about what you have to offer and the market that you're offering into, and the more likely it is to fail. Okay, so focusing on this mythical thing called product market fit sounds good in theory, but what can we do with that? How can we take that into reality? And how can we use that to refocus our efforts away from tech? Well, let's put it into practice. Let's take a real world example of a real world startup with some real product market fit assumptions and real decisions to be made on how to allocate time, money, and effort. Let me introduce you to Diverse Talent. So diversetalent.ai connects job seekers looking for diverse roles with companies that value diversity. So I'm the CTO currently of this Belfast-based startup. So it's my job to try and practice what I preach, what I'm saying in this talk today. It's my job to try and identify the assumptions that we're making as a company about our product market fit. And it's also my job to make sure that engineering effort is directed to tasks that directly answer those marketing related questions. We're a really small team with very limited resources, so we need to stay productive and focused at all times. So product market fit is really important to us. And what we're doing is innovative, so we are prone to making the wrong assumptions and more prone to failure. As a company, we know what our risky assumptions are. Our risky assumption is that enough employers and job seekers value diversity enough to pay to use us over our competitors. So in essence, we are assuming that employers are struggling with diversity related issues in their talent acquisition strategies, and job seekers are having diversity related issues in their job seeking process. These assumptions are absolutely existential to our existence as a company, and validating the assumptions that we're making is a priority for everybody in the company, because if these assumptions turn out to be invalid, then it's game over, it shutters down, and we become just another statistic in the 9 out of 10 startups that fail. To keep us focused then on everyday tasks, for every task that we do, if we're going to allocate money, if we're going to start a task that's going to take us 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, we have to ask honestly if what we're about to do helps validate the product market fit assumptions. And if it's not, if it's really not, we need to ask, do we even really need to do it? Can we defer it? Can we simplify it? Or can we scrap it? We talked about trying to validate product market fit assumptions. What do I mean by validation? Well, by validation, I mean metrics, trying to get some sort of feedback on the current market perception. So for us at Diverse Talent, it's things like written or online polls or questionnaires, like automatically collected metrics like Google Analytics or Mixpanel, but it could also be money. Money is a good signal from the market that what you have, what you're offering, fits with the market as it is. Gathering important data is really important to us to validate our assumptions because it gives us the signals on what is really needed, what is actually needed. And with that data, if we have that data, we can either adapt our assumptions that we have in the first place, or we can adapt what we're offering to better line up with what is actually happening and what is actually wanted in the market. And if you're able to adapt, then that is called a pivot. So the metrics give us the ability to pivot our assumptions for what we're offering. And remember, your assumptions are very likely wrong, and the stats have already told us. Being able and willing to pivot will maximize your chances of success. Because startups that do pivot 1 or 2 times have 3.5 times better user growth and 2.5 times and raise 2.5 times more money. Your assumptions are wrong. You need to be able to adapt to reality. We've seen that product market fit is important, that validating assumptions is really important, and you validate those assumptions with metrics, but how does that even affect what we build as engineering teams? How can we divert time, money, and effort away from tech into other activities? Well, in short, how we save on engineering is to do our engineering quicker, to do it cheaper, and to do it with less upfront costs, so we can save time and money and effort for metrics, marketing, and user validation. That's the short answer on how you do it. The slightly longer answer is to concentrate on producing slim and scalable architectures. Can you do it with less people, with less upfront costs? It's also about building less features. So are you able to only concentrate on features that directly test product market fit assumptions? And are you brave enough to scrap or defer or simplify the rest? Use more mockups. Do you even need a fully engineered product to test those product market fit assumptions? And if you don't, you can just as easily use mockups to save time, money, and effort. And you're also going to need more metrics. So for everything that you're building, if you are going to have some engineering effort, or are you producing data at the end of that, that is going to directly address the questions that you're asking about your assumptions. Okay, so back to reality again at Diverse Talent. So what you see on screen here is a good selection of the services that we evaluated when choosing our architecture at Diverse Talent. The point of everything on this screen is that there is a huge ecosystem out there of managed services that allow teams of any size, even a really incredibly small team like ours, to grow and to scale with you with little or no upfront cost. So how did Diverse Talent select what services we were going to use? Well, for every service, for every question that we had, we asked, was choosing that particular service going to help or hinder validate our product market fit assumptions? So by having or not having service X, was it going to affect validating assumption Y? And for most of the services up here, the answer was absolutely not. Well, no, not really. So what we were able to do was choose quickly, choose cheaply, and think about the existing skill set and the existing team. And this is the architecture that we came up with. If you want to know about any of the decisions on here, then please come and see us at the booth. We're at the Diverse Talent booth, just beside the food. The point is that because we chose quickly and we chose cheaply, we're able to save time, effort, and cost using scalable managed services to focus on other things. But let's take one example of an item on this list. Let's work through the example of how we chose our database service. So we asked, was choosing our one database over another database going to affect our product market fit? Was it going to answer any questions that we had about diversity, about job seekers, about employers and how they relate to what we are offering? And the answer for our database was no, not really. Having single digit response time from your database is great and it might lead to a snappier app, but does a snappier app really help validate those product market fit assumptions? And for us, the answer was no. So we were able to move fast, we were able to build quick, and we were able to focus on other things. In tech startups, a lot of the engineering goes into building features. So there's a large scope for making savings on features. But how do we decide what features to build and what features not to build? What we've done at Diverse Talent, and what I'm suggesting to you, is that everybody should ask before building a feature, is that feature going to help validate one of your assumptions about what you're offering, about what the market looks like at the moment? And even if you think it is going to answer that question, you have to also think, how does it answer that question? What actionable metrics can you get out of that feature that's going to help answer those existential questions? Because the danger is, if you try and build too many features, it defers the time that you have to get something real in the user's hands, to get that absolutely crucial feedback from them. So don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Design. So if you build less features, you'll also have to do less design. Design itself has a cost, and sometimes a big cost. Maybe not as much cost as engineering, but a cost nonetheless. And it deserves the same scrutiny about whether it is affecting product market fit assumptions as everything else that we mentioned before. We said that mock-ups can save you time and money, and they're absolutely recommended. But if you need to go further, and if you need to get something into users' hands to get that crucial feedback, then you're going to need design. And design itself has a cost, and implementation of design has a cost too. At Diverse Talent, we had to ask the question as well. Was our level of design going to help or hinder our ability to test our product market fit assumptions? And for us, the answer was, well, sort of. Having a good design helped us to showcase our concept, but waiting on a perfect design only increases the amount of time before you get something in the user's hands to get that crucial feedback. So I'm not saying not have nice designs. Nice designs are great, but only focus on them enough that you need and move on to other things. And one of those other things that is crucial is metrics and measuring. So this is a crossover between marketing and engineering. This kind of activity is exactly what we've been trying to make room and sacrifices for in our architecture, in our design, in our features, to have more time and focus on measuring. Because if we get those metrics for measuring, it will help us to test our product market fit assumptions. It will help us to answer the questions that we need to answer. And it's absolutely an engineering effort, and it should be an engineering effort from the start, not just an afterthought. All the teams, from junior developers all the way up to management, need to know what we're assuming about our market, what questions we're asking, and what data we need to answer those questions. The danger is, if you don't measure and then you fail, then you're flying blind about what you need to do next. If you measure and you fail, then that gives you the data and the ability to pivot successfully. In conclusion, if you take anything away from this talk, it's that your startup will likely fail. It will likely fail for a thing called product market fit assumptions, and it is important to focus on these assumptions and the questions that you need to ask to invalidate or validate those assumptions. Everybody needs to understand those questions, and what data needs to be captured, because they are absolutely existential questions to your startup. The other thing is to be honest and brave. Ask honestly if what you're doing, if what you're about to spend money on, actually helps answers to those questions, and be brave enough to say no and focus on other things. And the last thing is measure. Measure, because if you measure and you fail, then it's still a success because it will give you the data and the ability to know how to pivot your assumptions or to pivot what you're offering into the market that actually exists. One last thing before we all get off and go to lunch was mentioned that 9 out of 10 fail, and the more innovative your idea or your team, the more riskier the assumptions you're making and the more likely you are to fail. So I'm asking you a favour to help a local startup. If you can, we need metrics on how to pivot on our assumptions or on how to pivot on what we're offering. So if I can ask a favour, if you could go to our job seeker platform, it's early access, it's app.diversetalent.ai, or you can use the QR code. If you go on, if you register, if you kick the tires and try and give us some feedback using the feedback button. One disclaimer about my talk, and one disclaimer about all the talks you'll hear at NIDC today is that we're trying to give you advice, and we try to practice what we preach in our advice that we give. But it doesn't always go like that. There's always warts and all. So if you want to talk to any of the Diverse Talent team, we're down in the exhibition hall. Just come down and see us, and we'll tell you the real story, warts and all. If you're looking for any advice about venture capital, about pitching, about pitch decks, about fundraising or employment law, then come down and see our CEO, Jenna Simpson. What she doesn't know about those topics as well isn't worth knowing about. And also come down and see Cara Friend. So Cara Friend also have a stall right beside us. They have a thing called the Inclusive Business Charter. If you're looking to make your workplace a more inclusive and diverse workplace, then Cara Friend have a charter that will take your management and your staff through into how to make your workplace a more inclusive and diverse place. So that's everything from me. Enjoy your lunch, and thank you very much.